or you just have your core values with no nuance. And I think we're tired of all that. That's the whole university, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let's move on to this Democrat candidate in Iowa admits being uncomfortable with whiteness as she seeks to flip a competitive House seat. So here's the story: a Democrat running in Iowa admitted to feeling uncomfortable by the whiteness of her hometown in Minnesota after returning from a stay in New Mexico years ago. Sarah Trone-Garriott, 47, who's running unopposed in the Democrat primary, she's running against Zach Nunn, is coming under fire for her comments. Yeah, I remember the first time I came back to northern Minnesota to visit. I was kind of shocked at how many white people there were. Trone-Garriott recalled the area where she grew up in a resurfaced podcast episode. The feeling was very different. I was like, whoa. And again, I'm uncomfortable in a different way. Who thinks this way, Victor?
I don't know, if you were a Mexican American or black person, you said, I'm really uncomfortable with black. I can't believe there's so many black people. That people would say you were Uncle Tom, you were false consciousness, you were deluded, you were insane, you're cruel, you're racist. There's no finer person than Larry Elder, and he ran, and they were calling him all sorts of these type of white people were calling him names because they didn't think he was authentically black when he represented the best of black culture.
They call him like a white Negro or something.
Yeah, they did. You know, it's so, I hear that, it's usually from very upper middle class people that haven't been around poor white people. One of the unique things of the San Joaquin Valley is it had a lot of diasporas. In the late 19th and early 20th century, we had a lot of Chinese and then Japanese come, mostly as farmers. We had, of course, a lot of people came across the border. We had a lot of Mexican Americans, but the biggest from 1930 to 1941, 20 years of the Oklahoma diaspora. I mean, that was over 1 million people came with nothing. And so when I went to I'll just give you an example, in grade 1 to 3 at a little school called Jefferson, it's now on the bad side, it was then of Selma, there was a 2-story house right next to the playground. And I say that student body that I went, my twin brother and I, and maybe 5 farming families, were the only so-called white people in there. It was in the barrio. It is today. And nobody knew what you were. Nobody said, you're Mexican, you're white. I mean, people would make fun of you being white if you were, but there was no animosity. The teachers were all integration, assimilation, acculturation. But my point is, next to there was this house, had no paint on it. It was an old 2-story wood house. And there were 3 girls that lived there, and their parents were either divorced or not there, or alcoholic or drug-ridden. They had nothing. And they were very, very pretty girls, like 10, 12, but they had what they used to call a Welsh overbite, you know. I got it from my grandma. They called him Bucky Beaver. And I had to have braces, but they all had an overbite, and people made fun of them and called them Bucky, Bucktooth. But the point I'm making is they had nothing. And the teachers would get clothing and food and bring it over to the girl because they were almost abandoned. And when they came, I went to all through school with them. One of them, I'm not going to mention anything that would incriminate her. She was absolutely beautiful, but she had nothing white. And people and she lived in that area, and they were very mean to her. It wasn't because she was white and they were Mexican, just because she was poorer than they were. And I saw a lot of families like that. I can remember growing up here when a family came every year from Oklahoma. And as soon as they came, I said to my mom, I won't mention their names because I think they're still around, but I said, the Thompsons are still here, and he's going to get this big pole, and we're going to knock down a possum and the big pecan trees. And then they eat it. Can you believe that? They eat it. And she said, don't ever make fun of the Thompson. They're the nicest people, they're hardworking, and you're no better than they are. But my point is that common white poverty was endemic from Bakersfield up to Sacramento, especially from Fresno to Bakersfield. And, you know, they had nothing. And this idea that I'm ashamed of my whiteness, of my white privilege, is that what she's saying?
No.
These people had no privilege. The people, when you looked at East Palestine, they had nothing. And when Pete Buttigieg, he didn't even show up when they had that toxic spill, and then when he did, he looked like he was from outer space. He stood out so much. He was, in his voice, it was just condescending, and I was just, they don't understand this country at all, that the greatest number of people who are poor are white. Maybe not percentage-wise of the white population, but they're poor. They don't have a lot. But they, all of a sudden, when Obama created this binary, they were put on the oppressor victimizer, and and it had nothing to do with class. The people who have class advantages are Mondani. His dad is a PhD left wing with endowed professorship. His mother is a filmmaker with subsidies from the government. He came from this settler colonial family in Uganda. Can I use that term, Mondani? Settler colonial? That's what you call the Israelis that have 3,500 years of history. You didn't. I didn't know there were a lot of Indians in Uganda 3,500 years ago, which I don't care about, but you do. And same thing. It's just, I don't get it.